Jonathan Pierce, the self-made millionaire CEO whose name was on every major business magazine, walked briskly out of his skyscraper office. At 45, he had spent decades building an empire, high-stakes deals, hostile takeovers, and boardroom battles that could make or break millions. His life was measured in contracts, profits, and control. Yet nothing had prepared him for the passenger in his limousine that evening. Sliding into the back seat, he froze. A small black girl, no older than 8, clutched a worn teddy bear. Her braided hair clicked softly as she shifted, and her large eyes were locked on him with a mixture of caution, fear, and determination. "Shut up," she said, her voice firm and commanding. Jonathan blinked. Pride stung, but her words carried more than defiance. They carried fear, urgency, and an unspoken plea for help. The driver, Michael, glanced nervously at him. "Sir, who?" The girl pressed a finger to her lips. "Shh, he's still nearby." Jonathan's pulse raced. "Who's nearby?" "If you talk too loud, he'll hear us," she whispered, glancing at the tinted window. Jonathan realized instantly this was no prank. A child's life was in danger, and he needed to act immediately. He leaned back, studying the girl. Her worn shoes and patched sweater told him she had endured hardship. The teddy bear in her hand symbolized her fragile safety net. Something about the fear in her eyes struck a chord deep within him. "All right," he said softly. "We'll figure this out." Michael drove through streets Jonathan rarely noticed. The glittering skyscrapers gave way to quieter neighborhoods, narrow roads, shuttered shops, and dim street lamps. The city he thought he knew suddenly seemed alien. Amara, that was her name, whispered softly, began to tell her story. She had been followed for days by a man who was unpredictable, frightening, and relentless. He waited outside her school, followed her bus, and shouted from dark alleys. She had tried to hide, but fear clung to her like a second skin. Seeing Jonathan's limousine, she had climbed inside, trusting a complete stranger with her life. Jonathan's chest tightened. She trusted him because there was no one else. Her teddy bear, patched and faded, was her only comfort in a world full of shadows. "Relax," he said gently. "You're safe now." Amara clutched the bear tighter. "He knows where I live." Jonathan's thoughts immediately went to his own daughter, away at college. He had promised to protect her no matter what. That instinct surged anew. He would do everything in his power to protect Amara. As they drove, he silently made plans. The city could be a labyrinth of danger for a child like her, but he had resources, skills, and connections. This was not a business problem. It was human. The city blurred past the tinted windows. Amara described her pursuer in small, hurried sentences. She spoke of his anger, his unpredictability, and the nights she spent awake, listening for every footstep outside her home. Her grandmother, frail and unwell, could not offer protection. Jonathan listened, absorbing every detail. He felt a mixture of anger, empathy, and helplessness at the thought of her living in fear. A chill ran down his spine. A life so fragile, so small, was at the mercy of one threatening man. Yet he also felt awe. This child, despite constant fear, had climbed into a stranger's car and trusted him completely. That kind of courage, pure, unguarded, was rare. He thought of his own childhood, nights of vulnerability, moments of isolation, and the helplessness he once felt. He realized fear could paralyze even the strongest, yet courage could appear in the smallest forms. As the limousine glided through narrow streets, Jonathan felt an unfamiliar surge of responsibility. This wasn't a deal, a contract, or a stock market move. This was real life, and it demanded his full attention. Jonathan instructed Michael to find a safe, quiet place. They pulled into a small cafe tucked away from the main street. The warm lights and smell of roasted coffee offered a strange comfort. He bought Amara cocoa and sat across from her, giving her space. She hugged her teddy bear like a shield, avoiding his gaze. "Amara, I need you to tell me everything," he said gently. She hesitated, then slowly described the relentless man. The way he shouted, the way he followed her, the nights she spent hiding in corners. Jonathan felt anger, fear, and compassion mixed together. For the first time in months, he felt adrenaline not from deals or money, but from protecting someone's life. He noticed small details, the beads in her hair, the faded sweater, the tremor in her small hands. Every detail told a story of survival. Every word she spoke deepened his resolve. "You are brave," he said softly. "I promise. I'll make sure you're safe." Amara's eyes flickered with a tiny glimmer of trust. Jonathan realized something profound. Even in fear, human connection could shine through. Leaving the cafe, Jonathan cut off his assistant's call about the boardroom. "Reschedule everything. Life matters more than deals today." He called a retired detective friend who owed him a favor. Within the hour, they parked a few blocks from Amara's home. Jonathan insisted on walking her personally, the detective following discreetly. At the corner, the man appeared, pretending to check his phone. The detective stepped forward authoritatively. The man bolted, but not before a photo was captured for police records. Jonathan gently placed a hand on Amara's shoulder. "He won't bother you again." She exhaled, finally relaxed. A small smile appeared. Jonathan felt a warmth he hadn't felt in years. Courage, even in a small child, could inspire those around her. They walked slowly to her modest home. He asked about school, friends, and her dreams. Each answer painted a picture of resilience, potential, and intelligence. Jonathan realized how fragile lives could be and how meaningful small gestures were for someone living in constant fear. Inside her home, Amara's grandmother welcomed them with trembling hands and grateful eyes. Jonathan noticed photos on the walls, school awards, family snapshots, reminders of a life full of perseverance. "Here's my card," he said. "If you ever need anything, school supplies, groceries, or just someone to call, I'm here." Amara finally looked up. "Thank you for listening." "Most people don't," Jonathan smiled. "Well, you told me to shut up first." She laughed, beads in her hair clicking joyfully. Jonathan felt a deep, fulfilling happiness. A small girl had reminded him of empathy, courage, and human connection. On the drive back, Jonathan reflected on his own life. Power, money, and recognition had been his goals for decades. Yet today, a little girl reminded him that the most valuable thing in life was protecting innocence. The next morning, Jonathan arrived late to the boardroom. Executives waited impatiently. "Some things matter more than deals," he said. He announced a scholarship in Amara's name, covering her education through college. Not charity, but an investment in a life worth protecting. Jonathan had begun the day obsessed with power, money, and control. By evening, a little girl's command, "Shut up," reminded him of what truly mattered: people, humanity, and the courage to listen. Amara, sipping cocoa, told her grandmother, "That man in the fancy suit, he's not scary at all." Jonathan, back in his high-rise office, smiled quietly. Protecting innocence had brought him more fulfillment than any deal or contract ever could.